How did people buy plane tickets back in the day before the internet and maybe before cell phones? Did people just pull up at the airport the day of with all their luggage and expect to get a plane ticket from the front counter to leave within a few hours? Or was it exactly the same as today, where usually book it days or weeks ahead of the travel date? But you had to do it all talking over the phone? Going there the day of would be either really expensive or fully booked. You could call the airline and do it over the phone. Yes. Or you would get a travel agent to do it for you to simplify complex trips. Travel agents were very common. They often didn't charge but got a commission from airlines, hotels, etc. for booking. Nowadays they often do charge, though the fee isn't that much, and often specialize in travel like all-inclusive resorts and cruises. We'd ride our dinosaur to the travel agent or call the airline directly to book a ticket. You called the airline directly and booked. They sent a paper ticket. Having been around at the time, the transition to booking travel online was an amazing, mind-blowing experience. We'd use travel agents for complicated trips, e.g., visiting multiple cities on vacation, or just call up the airlines directly for simple trips. You could also just go to the airport a few hours early and see if a seat was available. But that was pretty rare, since you might waste an entire trip if the flight was sold out. Other folks have mentioned travel agents, but I think it's important to emphasize just how huge a shift this was. There was an entire profession that used to exist just to facilitate mostly leisure travel, which the advent of the internet has almost completely annihilated. Of course, there was a ton of inefficiency, profit skimming, and outright scams involved, so it's hard to shed too big of a tear for it. Customer service actually existed back then. Agents were very helpful when you called the airline. Travel agent on my block. Tell her where and when, she did the rest. It was great. You planned a trip and either bought the airline ticket at a travel agent or by calling the airline on their toll-free number. If you needed a quick flight, you either called the airline or bought a ticket at the airline counter at the airport. Widespread internet usage predates widespread cell phone usage. FYI. Also, see travel agent, travel agency, etc. Major airlines also sometimes had physical offices in the downtown urbanized part of major cities, so that you wouldn't have to go all the way to the airport just to book a flight. You went to your local travel agent if you couldn't call yourself. Before cell phones, we had, for it, telephones. It was a device like a cell phone, but it could only make calls and had a thing called a wire attaching it to the wall. The airline also had telephones, so we could use them to communicate and make the booking. The really wild thing was this big yellow book everyone got in the post each year that had all the numbers you might ever need to call listed alphabetically by business. There was a separate book that was white that had all the household names, numbers and addresses in your local area. They were referred to unimaginatively as the yellow pages and white pages. We had a local Delta office to buy tickets. It was wonderful. Travel agents or phone calls to the ticket office of the airport. Back when I was your age, we didn't have planes. We hopped on the train and hoped that it went where we wanted to go. All seriousness aside, we would either visit a travel agent and they would call the airline, or we would call on our own if we felt brave. There was a fare class called walk-up cash fare for people who just went to the airport and hoped for the best, and didn't mind staying a night over for flight. I find it funny that people have no clue how the world works without cell phones. For business travel, you'd have a travel employee or group who would coordinate it through a business travel agent. For personal travel, you'd often purchase a whole trip through a travel agent, car rental, flight, resort, or you just called the airline. You could buy a ticket at the airport. They have ticketing windows. I've known people recently even to do that so they could pay cash. You did it well in advance via phone or a travel agent. In the UK, there was something called teletext that you accessed through your TV. It was usually used for a TV guide, but it also had holidays advertised on there and it gave you a number to call. This has just brought back a really deep-rooted memory for me, tears of joy. Just wait until the young uns learn about paper tickets. I wasn't fancy enough for a travel agent. I mostly called the airline and got information on the options. It was much harder to shop around for good fares back in the day. Travel agent was an actual job. You would usually arrange everything with a travel agent and pick up your physical ticket before getting to the airport. There were several different computerized central reservation systems that were in common use too. Of the common ones were Sabre and WorldSpan that travel agents could use to make airline and hotel bookings. I believe these still exist in some form, but have been largely deprecated in favor of web-based booking directly with the airlines and hotels. Before deregulation, airline travel would be really expensive regardless of how you booked it. In 1977, only 63 of Americans had ever been on an airplane at any time in their life. But yeah, you could just go up to the counter and buy a paper ticket just like you see in the airplane movie. Otherwise you did it over the phone, or more commonly used a travel agent. Phones. You just call and order the ticket. Admission tickets. Travel agents were very popular back then. They would set up everything: plane tickets, hotel reservations, even car rentals. Plane tickets used to be really big and complicated. They came in a folder with several pages and you tore out a page at different steps. Airports were nicer then, not stressful. I still vaguely remember my parents booking plane tickets to Japan on the phone. Later on you'd go and pick up your flimsy carbon paper tickets with red ink. Travel agents. They were great. Travel agents. The world did exist before the internet and cell phones. People have been flying in commercial planes for decades before that. Yes. You could walk up to a ticket counter and purchase a ticket right then if you didn't order it in advance over the phone or through a travel agent. You also had to make time to check your luggage, but you didn't have to arrive 2 hours in advance. Because it was pre-9/11 and security wasn't tight back then. Corporate travel department and diners club. Recently I needed a flight between Suriname and Guyana. The only option to book direct was call up the airline. I didn't pay on the phone. I just gave my info and options of flight times. No email confirmation. Just showed up and paid. Was interesting experience. Was paranoid it wasn't real, but sure enough, all worked out. The phone and travel agents. Travel agent. I worked for a company that leased space to an agent in our building. When I needed to make trip, I called her with the dates, destinations, and the next day she dropped the tickets on my desk, along with the car rental info and hotel reservations. Saved me a lot of time. Travel agent or go to the airport. I buy tickets through a travel agent. Tell them what I want. Yes, call back, give me a couple options and done. No hanging on the phone waiting for an operator, etc. No. We used travel agents. There was a book published every year called The Official Airlines Guide that listed all flights from every airport in the U.S. So all flights were planned months in advance and travel agents did all the bookings. My father worked at the OAG publisher in Oak Park. I remember looking at the OAG and imagining all the places I could go.